Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Today is the last panel discussion, but I promise that it will be the best one. So today, as you mentioned, so we are tackling global challenges, and so these, such as climate change, food security, biodiversity, and it is important that to overcome those challenges, we really think about collaborating together. So without collaboration, we cannot achieve and move and address these challenges. So this is the pillar number one. The second is because you are preparing for the future. And for the future, we need innovations and new technologies and how to bring them together. So this is how we see that we can address such challenges, and they are not small. So collaborations and innovations, and therefore, we invite here visionary leaders and inspiring leaders that are thinking ahead and are transforming these challenges into opportunities. So allow me to introduce you to our panel today. So I will start with Marie Granström, CEO from Origin by Ocean. Marie. Thank you. Filipe Neves dos Santos, founder of Tribe Lab, Portugal. Tehraoui, CEO from Aryam Adaptive and Regenerative Solutions. And Filipe Rosa, co-founder of Veracruz, Almonds, Portugal. So thank you for being here today with us. So we have a lot of things to discuss, and I'm very excited to have your experience to share with us how we tackle such kind of situations, challenges. And I will start here by Filipe. So Veracruz Almonds, can you tell me how you can bring regenerative agriculture and sustainability together to have a competitive business and create value for such a thing like almonds?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And actually, I was in this stage a year ago to receive a diploma on sustainability, post-graduation at Neves. So it's great to be back and also to give back on that topic. So 60 seconds about Veracruz. We are almond producers. We're based in Portugal. We have something like 1,300 hectares, which places in the top 5 largest producers of almonds in Europe. And everybody says, does size matter? Yes, size is important, but most importantly than size or scale, what for us is really important are competitive advantages. And besides the size or the scale, for us, sustainability is perhaps one of the most important competitive advantages, along with technology, which we are strong believers also that we are within, for those who don't know, in a 5.0, 4.0 agricultural revolution, as we are in industry. So a lot of the topics that we were talking about here, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, blockchain, believe it, so we're applying that in agriculture as we speak today, at least in our farms. Obviously value added, which was also brought to this round table and others, and as you mentioned, so we produce our almonds, but we also process them. We have our own brand, we distribute them. And then last but not least is sustainability, because all of this ties in together. And if I could give back about all the studies of sustainability and what we believe in and our purpose is, people normally balance sustainability with being competitive. So sustainability is being more expensive. And that is a totally wrong view. For us, sustainability is a matter of being competitive. If we're not sustainable, we're not competitive. And actually, by being sustainable, we become more efficient. So we have savings in terms of water. We have savings in terms of applying products in our farms with higher productivity. We save on energy because we use greener energy instead of fossil energy. We can attract more people and more talent in our farms, and as you can imagine, convince Portuguese or other foreign people to work in the interior of Portugal in farming is a big challenge. But when we talk about sustainability, they say, I want to be part of Veracruz family. I want to be part of this history. So we can attract more people. We can retain more talent. And we had BPI here earlier on the stage, and we didn't address that topic. But for the banks nowadays, they're willing to loan money at a lower rate if your company is more sustainable. So again, I can give you 10, 20 different examples on how being more sustainable, you can become more competitive, and by being more competitive, most likely you'll survive and go further than any other of your competitors. So for us, sustainability is a kind of a concept that nobody should be talking about it 10 years from now. It's like, do you have an email address? Do you have an internet website? It's kind of no-brainer nowadays, right? 20 years ago, perhaps not, or it could be considered an expense. For us, sustainability, it's the same topic. 20 years from now, if we're still talking about sustainability, either we're dead or most likely we missed a big wave. So we are incorporating it nowadays, and for us, it's the only way forward. And I'll save some examples for the next round of questions. I'm sure everybody wants to learn about our colleagues as well.
Yes, thank you. So I will could you hand over to Rims? So Rims, so you are kind of enabling AI and data analytics to drive regenerative practices. And can you tell us about your company and also about how you leverage these technologies and what are the main challenges on that to become economically viable as well?
Thank you so much, Viviana, for having me here. So Aryam is an impact startup, a very young one that is indeed specialized in the use of AI and data to support environmental and social projects, and we are mostly focusing on regenerative agriculture and sustainable fishing, which actually gives us a good perspective on the challenges that are faced by our customers. So how do we use those technologies? Well, various ways. First of all, to get insight with data. As you know, AI is now very commonly used to process very large data sets coming from satellites, from sensors. So this allows to monitor fishing activities, detect illegal fishing in protected areas. It allows to monitor soil fertility and vegetation and moisture, so we can inform decision making. And it allows to make prediction, which is extremely helpful, in particular for farmers when they must pick and choose the right strategies for their own context, but also to set up, for instance, sustainable quotas for fish populations, since we can predict how they are going to behave under various environmental conditions. Now, coming back to the regenerative agriculture topic, the challenges actually are not about making it economically viable, because as Filipe mentioned, it is probably the most economically viable practice in the long run. The challenges or the real issue is why those practices are not gaining more tractions and why are we failing to scale them today. And there are a number of explanations to that. The first factor is clearly technical. The truth is that we know little about soil, and soil regeneration is a very complex process. So we can say that, unfortunately, it requires a lot of technical expertise and know-how that science has failed to bring in as much as it has brought for conventional agriculture. So there is a real need to beef up the knowledge and the science in this area. The second challenge is less technical and actually, I would say, perhaps psychological, because when we speak about shifting from conventional agriculture to sustainable and regenerative practices, we are basically asking farmers to change from a system where basically everything is under control to a system where they need to experiment, to observe, to adapt continuously, which means a lot of uncertainty and hence of risk-taking. So it's a full shift in paradigm. The third challenge is related to financial barriers. because transitioning to regenerative practices often involve upfront costs. Farmers need to change their equipment, their seeds, and so on. At the same time, they might experience a drop of income during the transition phase, as ecosystems are still recovering. And as of today, it's very hard and very challenging to compensate for this loss of income, namely through what is commonly known as ecosystem services payment, because those markets are not mature yet, and they are very hard to access, in particular for smallholders. And the last challenge that I see is actually institutional, with many policies and subsidies continuing in several regions to be favoring conventional practices over regenerative ones. So really the incentives are going in the wrong direction, and it is not helping at all. And as businesses are naturally more inclined to favor short-term profitability over long-term resilience, it makes things actually not gaining traction as much as it should, which is a shame and, in my view, rather short-sighted, because the risk of not investing in the transition is much higher than the short-term benefit of the status quo.
Okay, thank you very much. I will change now from agroforestry to something from the sea. Normally we think sea and fisheries about fishes and Mary, so you have kind of transformed a normal problem, a common problem, into an opportunity. So you have these invasive algae that you decide what you can do with that. And so can you explain more about how you tackle a problem, mitigating climate change and creating add value products for the society?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for the kind invitation to be here today. It's always music to my ears to hear that people are talking about regeneration, because I really think that the regeneration is the future. And hence, I founded Origin by Ocean in 2019 to work on the fact that how can we change the value chain of the chemical industry? My background is from the chemical industry. And use something which is a problem in the oceans and turn that into a regenerative business opportunity within existing value chain. So we are using invasive seaweeds and algae around the world and turning that, which is a problem, into bio-based chemicals and biodegradable chemicals that we can sell across the markets. Very typical way from the chemical industry, from textiles to cosmetics to home and personal care and food. For us, it has been very important to build the value chain so that we go to the areas where they have this contaminated, let's say, a situation where there is way too much seaweed. One of the good examples, if you look at the region-wise, is the Caribbean, unfortunately. They have 40 million tons of sargassum seaweed blooming every year for 7 months. So every single year you have 40 million tons of that seaweed. It's taking over the living space, of course, a marine ecosystem and other species, but it's also killing the economies of these islands. And that's why, even though that we are based in Finland, our hearts are very much in the Caribbean, and we have built a supply chain there as well, and working together with the UN, of course, helped us a lot as a small company to get access to a seaweed in a sustainable way. And that's also very important, that we have to look at the practices that we want to bring into the region, that they are done in a correct way, and the investments as well. So we've been very happy to get a lot of support from the EU, but also from the private sector, that there is a clear need to change existing value chains and supply chains, what we have. In Europe especially, I think we are one of the main, let's say, producers of problems as well in these regions. So we have a lot of companies producing goods in the regions of Americas. And I think we also have to be accountable on the actions that we have taken. They are not always sustainable. And I think that this is also a business model change. So at Origin by Ocean, we really want to go from extractive business models to regenerative business models. And that means that, first of all, the value needs to stay within the region. So if we look at the history of Europe, we have extracted a lot of resources, especially in the Caribbean and South America. And that has brought quite a lot of problems. We know how dark the history is, and we really want to change that. So we want to give the locals the opportunity as well, not just to be on the kind of the left-hand side of the value chain, just to do natural resources, but really climb up to producing these biochemicals. So we want to bring that region a biochemical industry and educate people to run that so that the money stays in the region. So I always say that the chemical industry is a global business, but it actually goes from local to global. So you can really have a local unit, especially in a biorefinery area, where you can build smaller production units, and they will have a global reach in terms of the products. And I think that's super interesting model as well, to think that how you can build these businesses around the world.
Very interesting perspective, thank you. We'll elaborate more on that part. So now passing to Filipe, Neves, and so Filipe, so we are talking here about tackling, bringing innovation and technologies, and to address the problems of today, but also of the future. So what emerging technologies are being developed and can help us to tackle these challenges?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for the invitation for being here and to share some knowledge that I have about the technology about this for this application. So before doing that, I will talk about my institution because it helps understand you better my ideas and my presentation. So I came from INESC. It has 40 years old, so we are making almost 40 years old next year. We are a private non-profit R&D organization, so we are between academia and the companies. So we don't compete on the market, but we help the companies to innovate. So we know everything about technology between robotics, energy, telecommunications, AI. So we have more than 1,000 researchers from the north of Portugal that are established in the Porto University, Universidade do Minho, Vila Real, so the main universities of north of Portugal. We have replicated the same model in Brazil. So since we are speaking about EuroAmericas, we have already replicated the same model in Brazil to support the ecosystem in Brazil, also driven the innovation there by the knowledge that is produced in universities. And saying that, in 2014, we found that we need to make science with impact. And to do that, better than do it with the needs and the desires of the real world, right? So the society. So, and for doing that, we have created several initiatives that will support on this. And we have 4 initiatives that are the main initiatives that we have at INESC, that are technology for something. And we have the technology for C, where we can pick the whole technology that we have in our institution, and we put on the oceans or on the sea to make more profitable, more sustainable that context. And we have the tech for agri-food, that I am the representative and the coordinator of that initiative, that we aim to co-shape the digital revolution of this sector, because the agricultural sector and the forestry will need for sure AI, and as like Filipe has mentioned before, this is impacting positively the innovation on this sector. And we have also created a laboratory that is the Tribe Laboratory. And why we have created this laboratory? Because we have a lot of energy, a lot of knowledge in our institution. We know a lot about robotics for industry, but when we are doing research for agriculture, we cannot look at in the same way as we look for industry. We cannot produce food as we produce cars, because the plant is a living thing, so we need to care the plant where it is better and stays more efficient. So in that way, we have created a laboratory that is the Tribe Lab, where we are focused on robotics and IoT to make this agriculture and forestry more efficient, more intelligent, and more precise. So in the term of precision agriculture. And we do it how? We do it putting machinery that is intelligent to understanding what should be done on the terrain and solves the problem of labor, the labor problem. So we don't have too many people to work on agriculture. Even in the crowded countries like India, we have a lot of people that are going out of rural areas to do not work in agriculture because it's hard, it's intensive work, and so we need machinery. And doing that, we need to consider that we have a Portuguese reality and a European reality that is based in small-size agricultural fields. So in average in Europe, we have 15 hectares per field in average to produce food. So this is the average typical size of the agricultural size in Europe. So we need to think machinery for this context. This machine should be small, should be friendly for regenerative agriculture, and we need to think about it that. And so we are developing robotics that could support this new way to produce food, and we are supporting Portuguese companies and European companies to have these robots to feed the farmers with more advanced technologies. And we have also IoT technologies that can sense everything in the field. It's not just the sense of the farmers that are using and put in the service of the agriculture. So we have advanced sensors that, for instance, you can touch in the plant and understand if the plant is in water stress or in another stress, understanding if there is another diseases. And we have also other sensors that could, for instance, tackle the problem of One Health. We have insects, vectors that could infect negatively the agricultural sector, but also our animal health and human health. And we need to tackle this issue, not only imposing the farmers to have smart traps, for instance, to collect insects and understanding how these insects are impacting negatively their farms. We need to understand how these insects might impact negatively the animal health and human health. So we need to tackle this issue not just from the perspective of the farmer, but as a society, and support all the ecosystem to be more clever, understanding how to tackle the problems that we might affect the agriculture. So I have presented in very brief what we are doing and what is our perspective, and I can share more.
Thank you very much. Coming on the technology and coming now again to Filipe, so you mentioned that you are in the agriculture 5.0 that I mentioned. I think that you are referring to human-centric, resilient and sustainable agriculture, and you mentioned also about talent and about technology. So normally you associate technology with some kind of negative impact. They are taking our jobs, they are replacing us. But the other Filipe also mentioned that actually you need technology because you don't have the people. So how for Veracruz do you see the technology? So how enables you and what are the challenges to that? So because also you associate these kind of technologies to more big corporates, you need scale, you need knowledge of people. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. It's definitely, we think farming, the big challenge, or the trees, or the environment, etc. But it all boils down to people, and how can you get the best people, and how they can bring up the best production, how can they be more involved, motivated, and how that results in terms of bigger crops. So just going back to what Filipe said, a good deal of the technologies he mentioned. So drone imagery, that through drones we can identify which trees have water stress and which trees need to have better treatments. Using traps are these, you can use very basic traps, which is a piece of glue, and you count how many insects are glued into a specific piece of nylon or something with a glue, or you can do a smart trap in which you have cameras, intelligence, IoT, machine learning, and you have a camera in which will count exactly how many insects are caught by that trap, and then automatically send us an alarm saying, look, you have too many insects from this special mosquitoes, for instance, for this time of the year. Most likely you'll have a plague or a disease. You have to do something about it quicker, faster, so it's a kind of alert. But that said, that's a technology speaking or working alone. The drones talking to machine learning, giving us alarm systems, or the trap systems doing it. But then you have to interact technology with people. So all our farmers that produce and are in our field, all our tractorists have a GPS in their tractor, and all of them have an iPad, okay? And the iPad is not to watch Netflix during the morning or to have fun. And in the beginning, they didn't start working with an iPad, okay? So you can imagine the big challenge, which is, hey guys, yesterday you didn't have a GPS on your tractor, now you do. And they say, okay, so now Big Brother is watching me. They want to know what I do every day. Why do I need a GPS? And number two, an iPad. I don't know how to work with an iPad, number one. Number two, you're trying to control me again. So the big challenge again was to show people that the GPS helps us to know exactly where they were and tracking what they do. Besides that, how much fuel is being spent by each tractor, how can we reduce that to have a lower carbon footprint, and how many products are being placed in the farms by those tractors, and how can we increase the productivity through those machineries. The iPad is basically so that when they start in the morning, they know exactly what to have to do in terms of labor tasks. And at the end of the day, they finish their tasks, and it's connected with the weather stations. So Monday they had to do a specific task, but it started to rain or it's windy, so it doesn't make sense to do that task anymore. So automatically the system updates to tell them what they should do. And all of this sounds great, but it just seems like more work to people, okay? So number one, now they have to adapt to new technology, and number two, now they have to work more. Where's the upside? The upside is we have a tractorist which takes care of 100 hectares. So we have 1,300 hectares, so it's an easy math. We have 13 tractorists. Each one of them is responsible for 100 hectares. He's the one that takes care of that land like it was his. So we have a direct productivity and bonus link related with his 100 hectares, okay? So we know exactly, and he knows exactly what he has to do. We know exactly how much he spent to take care of those 100 hectares based on the inputs which we tell them to do. And then when we do the crop, we do the harvesting of each 100 hectares separately, okay? So we know exactly at the end of the day how much was that crop related with the expenditure and how much was that in terms of yield, and we bonus and we give a percentage of the revenues to each of our tractors. So we turned this something which was a downside to something where people say, okay, I want to be part of this because it's like they own the land and they can see directly how much they can earn. So at the end of the day, it's applying what you would apply in a big corporation, like you said, a multinational, but bringing not only the challenges, or if you want, the risks of the technology, but also the upsides in which you could attract talent, and also they feel rewarded for it. I just wanted to spend 30 seconds to explain a bit more on the regenerative agriculture, because I think we're all experts here in the panel, but not necessarily to the people which are watching us. So, and it's new for me too, okay? It's not that regenerative agriculture is recent. It's been around, I think, for at least 70 years, 60 years. But for some reason it was hidden. So everybody knows about biological and organic, and everybody knows about conventional. And organic, it's like the good guys, right? Organic, great, it's healthier, also more expensive, but it's where I think is the link where people have the misunderstanding about sustainable being more expensive, because organic, it's like 20-25% more expensive. And then you have the conventional agriculture, which unfortunately in our days is seen as the bad guys, okay? Conventional agriculture, it's like you're going to destroy the world, a lot of pesticides, intensive agriculture, so nobody wants to look into that. And regenerative, in a nutshell, and very quickly, is not looking just on the organic side, which is about what products do we use. It's about concern with the water, how much water expenditure, with the soil, which exactly you brought, and it's the tough part which we just brought, which taking care of the soil. It's taking care of the people. It's taking care of the circular economy, and it's taking care of which energy do I use. So it's a much more holistic approach than just the biological one, which is just concerned about what products do we use and how that affects the humans. With the regenerative, I have 5 different spheres to take care of, but it tends to be more competitive, and it's a lower price than the conventional, or at least the same price, but definitely much cheaper than the organic. and saving the planet. So for us, it's not a balance between being a good guy or a bad guy. It's a balance between actually taking care of the planet. If you see, and I invite you all to see a documentary called Kiss the Ground, okay? And Kiss the Ground basically tells us that we have 60 crops in the future ahead of us. And after that, our soils are completely wasted and turned into dust, okay? 60 crops means 60 years. So it's not about actually being a good guy. It's about, okay, either we change it or 60 years from now we have nothing to eat with 10 billion people instead of 8 billion.
Yeah, thank you. Rim, so you mentioned also, could you have the mic? Okay. So you mentioned also about the challenge of bringing technology, about knowing about regenerative agriculture. And yesterday you mentioned that you have kind of technology to serve as well, to share best practice, and so the good side. So could you comment about how technology can also kind of contribute and to help the people, and what is also beyond the technology, the knowledge that you need to share?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for reminding what is regenerative agriculture. I think indeed it's very useful to feed the discussion. And one thing we need to understand about regenerative agriculture is that it's really at the juncture of very ancestral and indigenous knowledge and cutting-edge science. And this is where technology can play a very, very pivotal role by bridging this knowledge gap and bringing to people knowledge, data, success stories that can inspire them and emulate them, best practices that they can cross-fertilize. So really this is one major input that technology can bring. The other one is on the technical front. In fact, regenerative agriculture involves, as we have mentioned, things that are pretty complex, dealing with soil, dealing with the living. It's not that easy to make crop rotation, crop association, to introduce trees in crop fields, etc. So it requires technical and expertise and best practices sharing. And typically we have developed a generative AI assistant that we have specifically trained on agroecological practices to support people, not to replace at all human, but really to support them in their journey. Because what AI does and is very good at is typically to detect pattern in successful best practices across regions and across ecological system, and make it more easier to duplicate them and adapt them to other contexts. So this is an example of, I would say, a good use of a positive impact of technology in this field. That said, there is one challenge that I didn't mention, which is actually the lack of data. So when we want to develop more sophisticated tools, like, for instance, predictive models to see how agroforestry system could behave under various environmental conditions, then it requires a lot of data. And I think that initiatives like this forum and like cross-Atlantic collaboration can be extremely helpful in helping us bridging this data and knowledge gap by cross-fertilizing knowledge, by sharing data, by sharing, for instance, crop species that are resilient to drought, by sharing pilot experimentation that have been successful in a region and that we can scale up in other regions, and so on. So I would really call for this cross-Atlantic collaboration to advance science and progress in this field.
So data is really fundamental, and you heard yesterday also on the health panel that we need the data, good data, structured data to enable us to progress. So that was a good point. Thank you for sharing. And flipping a little bit now for the other side, so we have Mary. So I think you mentioned that in your case, it's not just about technology mainly for these communities. So you bring for them a little bit some other ways of growth. So it's not about the technology, but you mentioned also that you need to provide some knowledge and to bring these new technologies for, and knowledge about algae and maybe biorefineries in the future. Could you comment about this part, please?
Yes, of course. I think that's very important that sometimes, and being a startup founder, I should always say that the technology will save the world. But unfortunately, I don't believe in that. I think it takes much more than just the tech. And in our case, the biorefinery is, of course, our bread and butter as a company because it's the tool to make the whole impact to happen along the value chain. So I always say that, yes, we have a great technology, but without people operating the technology, it wouldn't do the thing. So I see that in our value chain, the biorefinery is more like an enabler for the whole regenerative business model to take place. And that means that you have to look at the social aspect of it as well. So if you really want to help communities, you have to involve and include the communities within your business model. And that means that some investors might see that as a risk, but in my view, that's the great opportunity. And it's kind of a missed opportunity in many cases because we tend to believe that once we have developed something in Europe, we are the only ones who can operate that. And I think it's a very old-fashioned way of seeing the world. So in our case, we really want locals to learn about the chemical industry. We really want them to be able to operate the whole value chain. And I think that's the beauty of the thing, that once you are facing a problem that you haven't actually caused, but you suffer from it, that you will have the tools then to do something about it. I don't like to use the word empowering because I think we are not powering anyone, but people are doing that themselves. And I think for us, that's one of the key things. And that has been our political discussions within the region that the politicians in the region were very, let's say, not maybe seeing the technology in that particular way, that it can bring the value to that particular country or the government. But after working with us over the years, they start to see that we actually want to do it. And I think that we have access to capital in Europe, and that's why it's our job also to find the capital for these investments and not, of course, to ask regions who are kind of struggling anyway with the existing infrastructures to put any money in or chip in, but it needs to come from here. And I think that's the way that we will achieve something together, because we have a common goal, what we want to do. And the controlling of things, it's another thing that you see a lot in a corporation, how they keep the control in a certain way. And I think that's also something that I would like to challenge, that how do we kind of disperse the controlling of the business globally? And how do we really honestly do that? And I just want to say that, and this is terrible that I'm looking at the oceans and there are lots of agro people here, but one of the biggest problems we have in the oceans is the eutrophication. It's the nutrient runoffs from the land to the sea. And that's why we have these invasive seaweeds blooming around the world, including Portugal. In Portugal, you have a big problem. And that's something that we have excess of nutrients, so nitrogen and phosphorus in the oceans. And you don't normally see that. But once you go over the tipping point of the ecosystem, you start to see these seaweed blooms. And I think that's why the land, so the agro, needs to work very closely together with the marine ecosystems to stop that from happening. Coming from Finland, I live next to the most polluted sea of this world, which is the Baltic Sea. And we have seen what happens when things get political and no one does a thing to this problem. And I think that's why it's great to have in the same panel ocean and the agro, because we should really shake hands way more.
Exactly. But actually, the agro could be solved also with technology, because if you can, and now passing to you here, so you dose a lot of chemicals. So the traditional agriculture that you mentioned, you put a lot of chemicals in the soil, in the plants, to try to minimize the risk. And we know that is needed. If you compare the organic against the conventional, we need it, but maybe don't have the knowledge or the sensors technology to enable us to be smart and to dose what you need by what you need at the minimal, and to minimize this. So could you leverage on this part? How are you active on these topics, and precision agriculture and how to minimize the impact.
Yeah, and I also thank Mary because and you, Viviane, for introducing that, because indeed we are working on that. Besides of explaining, besides regenerative agriculture, we should explain that there is the concept also for precision agriculture. That is to put the right product on the right place, on the right moment, in the right quantities. So. And this topic is a very problematic in Portugal, and we are attacking that issue with some slurry manufacturers in Portugal to spread these fertilizers that normally comes from the livestock animals, and to put in the fields in the right quantity and in the right quantity for the right plant, right? Because we need to do that. Yes, we have technology. The problem is sometimes how we make the innovation in Europe is not probably in the right way. We have a lot of money, yes, that's true, but sometimes we have a lot of people doing and redoing the same thing. So we need to think about how this innovation could be more driven to tackle the problems and avoid reinventing the same things several times. We do this several times. In Europe, we have several players inventing and reinventing this technology, and we're using European funds. The technology is there. So the problem is how we can access this technology as a cost that the farmer can sustain, because the problem is sometimes this technology is so expensive that the farmer cannot use in their daily operations. So we need to think how we can reduce the cost barrier for this access to this technology, but the technology for that exists. It's a political situation, of course, and is also a problem of how to make this technology accessible to all farmers and not just the bigger ones. Another topic that I want to mention is that when we speak robotics, we tend to think about robotics will stole jobs. No, robotics is here, and we are working on that to make this technology to serve the population and make this technology more suitable to make our environment more sustainable. We should think as a society, not the problem of the robotics taking our job. We should think more. Robotics and AI will play a central role in agriculture. Should or not we lead this technology? Should or not this technology be driven and designed by European or by other countries, and we can control it or not? That should be the question. And another question is, what should be done by the society when we have more free time, right?
Yes.
Because I have a daughter with 9 months, but I need to let her until the 5 hours o'clock. In my time, fathers was not like that. So the technology is not taking so much jobs from the people. So we need to think as a society how in the industry 5.0, how the humans are the centric persons on the society, and how this technology could help make the agriculture more sustainable, more regenerative. Of course, we cannot do this for all farms, and we cannot think about that we can kill the conventional farm because we will kill the population, because we need them. So we need to think in an incremental way, and the technology is there. We now need to make this technology more accessible, not just for some farmers, but for all farmers, and this is a challenge of the society.
But also I think it's not just a political aspect of it, because it's also an economic impact. The business model, you sell on the kilo base of the chemical, and I think we need to shift from this business model for one that is more, let's say, friendly for the earth, for our planet, and that is a win-win. So I think we need also to shift there, and so it's a bigger problem because there are big corporates on this domain, and of course there are kind of these influence that they are trying to defend their business. So I think there are multitude of problems to tackle to bring these technologies, but I don't know if somebody would like to share about this. Rim, I see you.
To react on what you have said, and back to my earlier comment, I think that even for those big corporations, it makes a lot of sense to actually invest in the transition towards more sustainable practices, because it will be really a short-term calculation to just continue as is, because it's not sustainable on the long run. So even for them, actually, it's a risk calculation that they must make and take action. And I think that all the agribusiness corporations do have a role to play in this transition journey and should contribute and play their part of the partition. It cannot just be farmer alone underwriting the transition. There must be a more balanced risk sharing between the various actors. And of course, in exchange of that, agribusiness will ask for certifications, for transparency, for traceability, and it's fair and it's good because it will bring value to the process. But I believe, and back to what you say in terms of a societal project, that it's more than a certification that we need. What we need is really a brand, a storytelling that will convince everyone all along the value chain about the benefit of adopting and scaling regenerative practices. And what I mean by all the actors of the value chain is really up to us as end consumers.
Exactly. But for that, we need transparency, you need the technology that you use in blockchain to know that you are kind of really buying sustainable products. So, and again, technology can help, so we need to leverage and see how we can clever see. But I think one point that is not just technology is about partnerships. I would like a little bit that you focus before passing a little bit of some question to the public about partnerships, because we talk about scalability, and partnerships can help us to scale maybe in different ways. So normally you are envisioning some kind of big farms to have the scale, or big chemical plant to have the profitability. So how partnerships and scale can help us to remain competitive and to help also more marginalized communities, smaller players, and so not empower them, but giving the right to play in the same field.
Thank you. I'll jump into that one. It's funny because it's so much to talk about all the other topics that were brought here, precision agriculture and the consumer, etc. But about partnerships, so everybody that knows about the sustainable goals, so number 17 of the sustainable goals pillar is exactly partnerships. And again, it's all about not having to reinvent the wheel or to work together with entities that could drive you further. So I like the expression, you can go faster alone, but you can go longer and further when you're around with other people. So in our particular case, in giving examples, so we work with 3 entities. We work like 30, but I'll give you 3 examples. So we work a lot with all the universities, all the institutes, all the startups in the region as an open door policy to bring us whatever they have new for us to experiment. So a lot of what we talked here about the consumer being the ones that most likely will have to push us towards this regenerative agriculture and transformation, it's all about the mindset as well. So the consumer can push us, but for instance, in agriculture, a lot of the mindset is, I have to try things like for 30 years, and once they're stable, I'll implement them. And we have to have a more risk-open perspective in agriculture, not changing the crops or changing things every 5 minutes, but doing a startup conception of MVP, having a minimal viable product, introducing new design thinking technologies into agriculture, which we do in big corporations in other industries and other sectors, but not in agriculture. So we have different plots of land, and in our different plots of land, we do experiments, which we work with the University of Castelo Branco, Politécnico of Covilhã, etc., a lot with startups also. Another thing we work is with a collab. It's called Food for Sustainability. It's one of the biggest collabs you'll have in Portugal, I think in Iberia, related with sustainability for food, as the concept says. So we are one of the founders of that collab, and the idea is the collab has something like, I think today, 60 different researchers from all around the world living in Idanha, okay, believe it or not. So the population of Idanha increased from 500 to 560 through these new researchers from all around the world. And they challenge us to say, what are their needs and what is the future for what we're looking at. So we choose one of the pillars of sustainable and regenerative agriculture, which is a circular economy. So what can we do with the waste or the subproducts of the almond shell? So we produce 2,000 tons of almonds. So that means like 10,000 tons of almond shell. What you do with that? You produce pellets to put in ovens, or you can do something much more value added than that. So what they're studying with us, for instance, is we can do our packages of our own brand with the shell of the almonds. So we can replace plastic. So instead of having the packages, we can, in plastic, we could have the packages of our almonds shells. So just two free examples with institutes that we work, and talking about EuroAmericas, there's definitely a lot we can learn from Brazil, because they're #1 top producer of a lot of commodities worldwide. They have very advanced systems for regenerative soils. So we can bring a lot of that expertise with our own production in Portugal. And I think, and I humbly think, we can also give back a lot from olive, wine, almonds producing in Portugal, also to take that to certain regions of Brazil and making that flow of concept working.
And the US as well, no?
The US is the #1 top producer of almonds in the world, so like 85% of almonds worldwide, but regenerative is not within their agenda these
okay,
days.
maybe
so
we can bring
hopefully
that.
They'll get there. But,
yes, we'll get there.
I think Brazil will be easier to bring along.
Okay, so Mary, so can you elaborate on partnerships and the cross-boundary partnership collaborations, but also what is needed in terms of maybe policies to enable that? So.
Yeah, I start with the partnerships. We call them ecosystems. We have, I think everyone is talking about ecosystems nowadays, but I think it's different than a partnership. I think it's very crucial that when you are building something, that you are part of the ecosystem, and you have to see who are the other ones that you can create something together along the value chain. And in our case, when we are building these biorefineries, when we are having investment projects, we are already looking at how we will share the infrastructures. The biorefinery is just the one part, but there will be wastewater treatment plants, energy, and all of that. So we have to make sure that, especially in these areas in the Caribbean, for example, they need that. So we want to have access to that, of course, as a company, but we will also give access through the investment to the communities. So I think it's very important that we also start to share infrastructure, and not just that you have an industry and something else communal, but you can actually combine these two. And then you are kind of beyond the partnership, because you are all parts of the same ecosystem. When it comes to the policies, I'm not a very big fan of policies. I think we discussed before that how the regenerative farming is and how the conventional farming is being done today. There is a lot of subsidies being paid by EU. So EU is supporting conventional farming today. There is a certain business model is built on that. So if we really want to make a change, we have to start looking at how we pay the subsidies and how do we want to use that as one of the tools. And I think the policies, we have seen a lot of policies in Europe. Some of the policies are actually driving the innovation away from Europe today. If you look at the new Innovative Food Directive, it's a nightmare for many of the new protein producers in Europe. Many of them are moving to the US. So we have to be super careful with the policies, because they can backfire. And I think in Europe we are in a situation that many of these policies, they are backfiring the innovation. And that's why we are lacking behind a lot as a continent when we look at the US, for example. And it's the truth, and I think now is time to face it.
Thank you. And Rim, could you comment as well on this part of collaborations? You have a project in Morocco, maybe cross borders. Well, what do you need to grow, to scale, and partnerships, collaborations, or policies needs to change and support?
Yeah, so regarding partnership, I think it's indeed absolutely key in order to scale and in order to cross-fertilize knowledge. I insist a lot of that, because we are really learning as we are implementing. So the more we can share data, the more we can share knowledge, the more we will be successful in implementing this transition. And hence, transatlantic collaboration, taking into account Africa, as it has been said many times during this conference, is absolutely critical in my view. On the policy, I have a slightly different view. I think the thing is that there are policies today and they are creating wrong incentives. So I think they should be reformed to align incentive with more regenerative practices. And they can also play a role in terms of perhaps harmonizing the framework and the standards, which can be very useful to create a unified market for regeneratively produced goods, which then will help two things. The first one is to reward farmers for the ecosystem services that they are providing to us globally as a society, and also to create a kind of level playing field and perhaps ease the tension that also have been mentioned several times around the Mercosur agreement during this conference.
Thank you very much. So I don't know if there is any last question from the public. If not, maybe a final word from each of the speakers. So any call to action here that you like to send to our audience?
I can start. I think there is a lot, people are talking a lot about colonizing Mars today, and people are investing a lot of money into that technology. I'm always saying that I think we shouldn't do that. This is our home, this is our planet, and I think we should first of all invest into this planet and our home before we actually need the ticket to go to Mars.
Thank you, very nice call.
Well, that is a challenge, because for a researcher, I love too much this challenge to tackle on Mars. But I would say that probably in speaking about investment, I think that we need to find a way, and since we have a lot of AI, to understand how we align all agendas of Portuguese entities, persons, in one agenda without fighting between each other, and find what is the best for all of as a society. So I will put more my money aligning that agendas.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would re-emphasize the same point. I think that technology is a wonderful tool as long as it is put at the service of truly good societal project. So really the question for me is, what is the societal project that we must collectively build in order to thrive within the planetary boundaries?
Thank you very much.
Well, my take is I'll finish as I started. So to be competitive, it's a question of survival. And to be competitive and to survive, you have to be sustainable. And again, to be sustainable, it's not about increasing your costs, so to be more expensive. On the contrary, it's to be more efficient. So to be sustainable, you need to be efficient, and you'll be competitive. If not, you'll be out of the market very soon.
Thank you very much to all. So we have a very insightful discussion today. I hope that you've enjoyed, and then we can continue the discussion after this session. Thank you for our leaders here today. Thank you.